Hey folks, my guest today is Emil Brill. He's the founder and CEO of Vendor PM. His mission is to modernize the way property managers work with service vendors. All right, Emil, you ready to take us to the top?
Yeah, happy to. I'll give the quick origin story here. Started my first business when I was 14 years old. It was the shitty family situation. I had to make some money to help out my mom and sister at the time. So I started going door to door in my neighborhood, selling window cleaning services of all things, because at 14 years old, where else are you going to get a job and make money? Ended up actually being quite decent at it. Brought, my friends along, they brought theirs. And before we knew it, we had this team of 50, 60 really, really hardworking, dedicated, like-minded individuals at a young age. And we were all selling door to door. And we started, building this relatively large business. We were doing about 10,000 homes a summer at the time.
Emil, where were you?
Oh, this is Toronto.
Okay, great.
This is Toronto, yeah. And so we built this business throughout high school, very early days of university, eventually sold that business. And then I started heading up sales for a high-rise window.
Well, hold on. So when did you sell that business? How old were you?
That would have been around 21, I believe.
And what did you guys sell it for?
In a relatively small amount, but also just undisclosed, and we'll keep that private for now.
Why did you guys decide to sell it at that? Why was that the right point in time to sell it?
We were doing the same thing for 7 years, and felt that we had learned everything that we wanted to at the time. The initial motivation behind it was certainly monetary, simply for the fact that I wanted to help my family out. And once that, was addressed, and especially at that stage in my life, high school, university, your needs are not, what they are when you're, later in your life. I felt that I met my monetary goals, and I also felt that I'd learned and expanded that business to a stage that I was comfortable with, and I was ready to take on the next challenge.
And but just before we move on to the next challenge, the scale of that business when you sold it was about how much in revenue that year?
Yeah. So, again, this is a seasonal business, because most of your staff are in school, high school or uni.
Yeah. But are we talking like 100 grand in sales or like 2 million?
No, roughly $1 million a year was where we were sitting. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. And there was 4 of you said?
Oh, no. This was myself that had started that business, but there was, a relatively large team. It was a labor intensive business, not just on the actual completion labor side of the work, but also from a sales side as well.
Okay. Now take us into after 21. What happened next?
Sure. So I started heading up sales for a high-rise window cleaning company. It's still, within that world that I was familiar with. And I started getting an idea of, really that sticker shock when you go from, we'll call it single family home to commercial. And by the way, just for definition purposes, when I say commercial, we're talking about office, condo, apartment, hospitality, hotels, anything that's not consumer or single family homes. And really, really got that sticker shock. Reason being is, to clean the windows, let's say just the exterior windows of a single family home, $200. To clean the exterior windows of an average condo or apartment building could be $10,000, $20,000. Or these contracts, these multi-year contracts could be, in the 7 figures, right? And so I'd gotten really excited by just how much money property managers, because I'm selling to property managers, not homeowners anymore, are spending on something like window cleaning. And so I thought to myself, well, if they're spending this much money to make their windows shine and sparkle, how much are they spending on literally every other building service? Okay. And that number annually in North America is over $400 billion. So it's a very hard number to ignore. Now, from there, I was evaluating the way that they're spending this money, the workflows involved.
Emil, sorry, personal context. You're skipping college or you're in college doing this?
So I actually did graduate. I never went to class. It was pretty much just, I went to McMaster's in Hamilton, and I would just drive over to Hamilton, cram the night before and do my exams. But the focus throughout my university days was certainly on business.
Oh, what's going on there, YouTube? Good to see you guys. Now imagine this. You love watching these interviews with SaaS founders, but imagine if we took all of the valuation data out from over 2,807 interviews I've done manually. Saves you a lot of time. Well, we've done this. We've built it into the beautiful interface inside of FounderPath. Check this out. I'll show you how you can access this in a second, but you log in, you connect your Stripe account, you see your valuation real time, you can see what it changed over the past 88 days, and even set goals for valuation this year. Now, the secret to valuation is there's many different ways to value a SaaS business. So the reason you're going to see 3 or 4 different valuations inside of your FounderPath dashboard, this is all free by the way, is because depending on who's doing the buying of your SaaS company, you're going to get a different valuation. A VC is going to pay a different valuation. Private equity firm is different. If you're going to do a minority sale, that's different. And if you sell the whole business, that's a different valuation. You can see all those when I hover over here. Right. So the teal is what a VC would pay, yellow is what private equity, and red is if you sold the whole thing outright. Now, what's cool about this is not built off random data. Again, you guys hear these interviews on YouTube. All these data are built from real-time valuation data points founders share with us on the show. So traction, 1.2 million, seed round, 3.7 raise, they sold 22% of their business. Go in here and filter by the event. Maybe you only want to see companies that have sold the whole business. Well, here are a bunch that have been acquired, the valuation and the multiple. Maybe you're going out right now and you're raising your seed round. Well, go in here and look at all this recent seed deals that went down, what they raised, what valuation they raised at, and what percent that they sold. There's never been a larger data set of SaaS valuations than what you can get now inside of FounderPath, and we're thrilled to bring it to you. All right, we're going to go back to the YouTube video here in a second, but if you want to check this tool out, if you want to jump in and sign up, you can check it out for free to get your valuation at this link, founderpath.com/products/valuations. Or if you go to founderpath.com and hover over products, click on get your valuation here and go ahead and sign up to give it a whirl. Again, all that valuation data live right inside the platform. I hope to see you there. All right, let's jump back into the interview. Two questions. Why do university? And you're do university, but also why go join a high-rise cleaning company as head of sales if you just sort of sold your company for, it sounds like potentially a nice chunk of money for a 21-year-old?
Yeah, so twofold. Okay, so the first question was, sorry, could you repeat the first question again, Nathan?
Why go to college?
Oh yeah, 100%. So listen, if I could go back and do it again, I don't know if I would. The truth is that, both my parents are immigrants. There's something that's super important to them. I said to myself, look, if I can do both and it really doesn't come at a material cost to growing a business, then I rather make them happy. And especially my dad being ill, this was something really important to him. It came at little cost and it was something that I justified as being worthwhile. And listen, again, this is, we're talking about soft skills here, right? It's not something that you necessarily need to learn through a textbook. When you're studying hard skills, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to complete your education. So very different conversation and a whole other rabbit hole. But to your second question around, why join this company? Because the scale, the requirements, the knowledge, it's a completely different world. You're talking about, in a single family home space, 2-story, 3-story homes. And now you're talking about 60, 70-story buildings. So there's simply a learning curve. And I wanted to de-risk by learning from, someone who's been there, done that, and built a successful business in the space.
Mm-hmm. So fast forward here. What year did you launch Vendor PM?
Yeah. Launched Vendor PM in 2020. And I'll give you just a quick 30 seconds of what I learned and what led to that being in that high-rise window cleaning world. So the massive spend, the GMV in this market's for over $400 billion annually. The workflows today are completely manual and offline. They're heavily reliant on email, Excel, word of mouth. And remember, I sat on the supply side of this dynamic and I saw this transpire thousands of times. Every single time, this would come at the expense of property management, right? And I just want to clarify, we're not talking about the manager of an individual condo unit or a single family home. This is institutional property management. They're managing entire assets, buildings, right?
Yeah. The water flows hot, cold, going the right way. The fire pumps working, the HVAC working correctly, a paint jobs, like that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And that's what led to starting Vendor PM in 2020.
I see. Okay, got it. So you're out of college at this point?
Out of college at this point. Yeah, just graduated.
How's dad doing?
Not doing anymore.
I'm sorry to hear that. Okay. So well, I guess, I mean, since you sort of shared that as part of your story, did I guess his passing have any impact on you saying, you know what, I'm going to go try and hit a home run for myself here?
Quite candidly, I don't feel, that it had much of an impact. I know that his wish wasn't for, for business or wealth or any of that sort. He just wants me to live a happy and balanced life. Listen, that said, every time I'll be quite candid and honest with you, every time you hit a major milestone, you go, oh shit, it would be great if he was here to see this, to celebrate this, right? But no, it had nothing to do with it directly, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And what about your mom?
I mean, listen, she's an amazing woman. She lives quite a simple life, and all I have to say is she's seen this, let's say 1 degree out, seen us grow Vendor PM over the past years, and you could tell that there's genuine pride there, which is obviously a great feeling.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's sort of not bury the headline. Fengate's a customer, a Vision Young's, Bentel Green Oak. I'm reading off your website, right? Community Living Toronto's a customer. What are these companies or these sort of owners of properties paying you on average per month to use your vendor management software?
Right. So at a high level, I'll just talk about what ACV is on both sides of the marketplace, because this is a software enabled marketplace.
Yep.
ACV on the property management side, some of the names that you mentioned, is relatively nominal, right? It could be anywhere between $6,000 to $10,000 a year.
Okay.
Where we do monetize is predominantly on the supply side, and that's on the vendors. And so ACV on the vendor side could be anywhere between, let's say, $3,000 and $6,000 a year, but that's at volume.
Yep. Yep. Well, let's talk about that. So how many vendors, right, have made at least $1, got at least $1 of work on your platform over the past year?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have those exact stats, but I could tell you that in the past 2 years, just a couple quick, I guess, headline points on both sides of that marketplace is that we've gone from virtually zero on both to 5,000 buildings on the property management side, on the demand side, and 35,000 vendors on the supply side. Now, that is all in Canada. We're launching now in the US. And so we do have a big backlog of both supply and demand that's being implemented, being onboarded. But I won't speak to those numbers yet, A, because they're so fluid, and B, I don't have them off the top of my head.
Yeah, we won't talk about the US, but look, there's a lot of marketplaces that build a lot of demand, but they can't get people to actually use the marketplace to transact. So how do you manage an active building? Are all 5,000 active?
Yeah, the vast majority are, and it's a very good point. Especially our market is our market is rather we'll call it behind as far as technology and adoption goes. So there's this massive change management piece that you need to deal with. We're predominantly competing with manual processes, emails, phone calls, right? So it's very difficult from a change management lens, and we've over-indexed on product engineering and customer success as a byproduct to mitigate that, and we've done a good job doing so.
But just to be clear, how do you define an active building? Is it $1 spent in the past 30 days or what?
Yeah, no, it's predominantly based on what we call wallet share. So we have this tool, this feature in Vendor PM, where they're actually planning all of their services and all their contracts through Vendor PM. That becomes the benchmark, what we call the scorecard for success. And you can take a fulfillment rate based on that.
I see. Okay. And obviously there's buildings and then property managers, but a property manager could have a lot of buildings. So how many property managers are there that manage the 5,000 buildings?
Yeah, roughly 2,000. So the way that it works is, yes, you do have, I mean, listen, you could have AAA office assets where you have a team of 3 or 4, even 5 managing one building. And then you could have B and C class assets where, to your point, you have one property manager managing, let's say, 2 or 3 buildings per person, right?
Mm-hmm. And then quickly, same set of questions on the other side of your marketplace. How do you define an active vendor?
Right. So an active vendor would be, are they responding to RFQs and RFPs that they're receiving from the property management side?
In the last 30 days?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the way we measure marketplace success is what are the percentage of RFPs that are getting 3 bids back? See, because that means that you have, right? That means you have liquidity of supply, which is fundamental in a marketplace. It's not news to anybody, but that's also what the successful value exchange is for a property manager. You see, the way that I look at it, I love comparing this to Uber, right? You download Uber, you press a button, and that's your aha moment. Oh, this is so cool. A car is coming to me. That car doesn't get you to the right destination. You're not using Uber again. You don't have a successful value exchange. So that metric that I just defined, the percentage of RFPs that get 3 bids back, that defines both a successful value exchange for the PM and the liquidity of supply. So that is our service level guarantee. That's what
is that number today? Towards. What's the percent?
So today in major metropolitan cities, it's over 90%. In some more, we'll call it secondary, tertiary markets, it's about 75%. And I'll give you just some context here. Only 6 months ago, that number was at 15%. Okay,
so but a weighted average across both is something like 80% then, up from 15.
Correct. Yes.
What did you do? What leverage you pull to go from 15% to fill rate to 80%?
Listen, I mean, it's a really corny line, and I can't remember who said it. I think it was Jobs, but essentially focus is not what you say yes to, it's what you say no to. And the reason I say that is because we make a point as a company value of being so hyper-focused and over-focused on solving the direct problem in front of us that this simply wasn't a focus until we reached that part within the process. So, I mean, I wouldn't say there's any one silver bullet. It was simply shifting our focus because it was the right time and place to do so. And then a whole slew of lead bullets that led to improving this. And we're not done yet. There's still many more lead bullets that are going to get this up to 100% or very close to.
So in February, your last full sort of month, right, of operating, how many RFPs were submitted through the platform?
Oh, yeah. Probably between 500 and 600.
600. Okay, interesting. And then I guess tell me how you've built the team out. You mentioned some team sort of categories earlier, but what's the full size today?
Yeah, so full size of the team today is around 65. We have some exciting news that I won't talk about now. But
how many engineers?
Engineer, I actually need to go back and find the specifics, and I wouldn't want to speak to those specifics right now either.
I mean, is it heavy engineering or is this way more about, signing up new vendors, new PMs?
I don't want to say it's not heavy engineering. Listen, at the end of the day, you're selling a technology product, and your engineers are, one of your greatest assets. So, listen, we're not building antimatter here, but this is largely an execution play, as most marketplaces are. So, you're definitely over-indexing on areas like customer success, as an example.
Mm-hmm. And how have you decided to fund the business state? Are you bootstrapped?
No, venture.
Okay, so tell me about sort of why did you decide to raise? When was the last raise completed?
So the last raise that was announced was in June or July of last year. That would have been our seed round. And look, the reason is ultimately the
And
fact
sorry,
that
how much was that for?
so that would have been a $4 million round.
Okay, got it.
And then, some venture debt on top of that as well.
Tell me more about that. A lot of people don't use venture debt that early. Why did you decide to go that route?
An insurance policy. Don't need to draw on it, but I'd like to de-risk.
Do you have to pay unused fees?
No.
No unused fees on the debt. Okay, interesting. Do you bank with the bank that also gave you that line?
No.
So there's no deposit relationship they're banking on?
No.
Interesting. Okay, got it. So 4 million seed. And then it sounds like you've got an announcement coming up. People can infer whatever they want about that, but that's great. Talk to me a little bit about, look, if you do this math, right, you said 3,000 to 6,000 per vendor, right? And obviously we can take 35,000 vendors times 3K a pop. I mean, I don't think you're doing 105 million in revenue.
No, see, there's a freemium model, and I don't want to go into the details and specifics here, but I will say there's a freemium model. And we have, our model has very strong triggers and retention that result in these conversions and the revenue growth we've been able to achieve today. I don't want to speak to those numbers either, but
well, I mean, by the way, Emiel, that's your genius. That's why we do the show, right? So there's a lot of marketplaces where you're everything you just said, but you know what? They're duds. They do nothing. They're worth nothing because no one uses them, right? So how are you activating these vendors, which you define as they're responding to an RFP in the last 30 days?
Correct. That's the trigger, as that's defining activation. That's also the trigger for upgrading in a lot of cases.
Yeah, but the question is how, right? A lot of people can sign up 35,000 vendors. They can scrape Craigslist and do that in 2 seconds. The genius in what you're doing is you're activating them, right? So why are they responding to your RFPs and not other people's RFPs?
Because the alternative for them is phone calls, emails, and word of mouth, the same manual processes and heavy cost of sales that they've been reliant on for the past 3-4 decades.
Mm-hmm. And what would you consider, again, it sounds like you don't want to share your own numbers, but for a general in a marketplace, what would you consider a good conversion rate, right, on this side of the marketplace?
Well, it really depends on the triggers. I mean, the channels, because there are multiple channels to which, vendors are upgrading. Our strongest channel, is north of 50%. But look, ultimately, there's so many variables that you couldn't give a solid answer to that question. You could be talking about a B2C marketplace where, the average, we'll call it transaction is in the hundreds. And as a byproduct of that, you don't have as strong of a trigger and therefore the conversion is lessened. I think, competition and what tech stack the market is using currently plays a big role tying into your previous question. There's just way too many variables and they're unique to each business and channel.
Mm-hmm. You talked to us about economics on both sides of the marketplace, but do you ever try and get to the point where you can actually quantify the money that vendor PM can generate from each RFP, like submitted and done through the platform? And if so, like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I can tell that you're, very thoughtful because these are questions that VCs would get to very quickly as well. Yes, it is something that we think about, something that we were tracking early days. We're no longer tracking it because the business is growing at an incredibly rapid rate and the number is too fluid that it's not.
What's incredibly rapid rate? You're talking like 100% year over year or something different?
More than that.
Okay, got it. Obviously now going from $1 to $5 is 500% growth, right? So it's not hugely valuable there in understanding your business.
Correct. I would say we're hitting, what tier 1 SaaS metrics and tier 1 growth, growth targets would be for our stage.
Got it. We don't know what stage you're at. So why don't you talk about what those tier 1 metrics are?
Sure. Well, I mean, listen, as far as stage goes, we did our seed in June or July of last year. So the next stage would be your Series A. So when you
but I think it's kind of silly, I would think, to define a company by what they've raised. There's hundreds of companies that have raised a lot of money and they do no revenue. Reflective raised $150 million. They did 14 million in revenue and sold for $14 million. It was a total dud.
Yes.
Right. So I don't think defining stage to what you've raised is a smart move. I would say
Sure.
I would say most Series A companies, obviously, they've got to be growing at least 300% year over year, triple, 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 double, double, right, sort of thing.
You've
I would
nailed it.
say that you're probably finding yourself in a weird spot though, because you have to convince markets that you're a software company when really you're a software plus marketplace, and so you have to make sure they see that as a
Correct.
strength, not a weakness. Right. And I would say most people in their Series A right now are seeing between like a 25 and 40x multiple if they can convince the market that they are truly a SaaS movement. Are you sort of in
Correct.
those ranges?
Yeah, I would say yes. Let's say yes.
Yeah, interesting. Look, what I love, there's a lot of folks that only have marketplace. Writers Access is a good example. And you are in a very unique position where you own the relationship with these folks. You can build unique software specifically for each of them that is pure SaaS for the
Mm-hmm.
PMs and for the contractors on the other side. Do you have any of those embedded SaaS tools yet or no?
Yes, on the demand side, we want to build up more on the supply side.
Makes a ton of sense. Are you doing factoring or is there a lending business here where you're bringing forward RFP cash flows?
There 100% will be.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense there too. How much do you think you could deploy letting people get the cash 30 days up front, and then, getting the invoice paid 30 days later? I mean, is it a billion, 100 million? What?
We're taking a crawl, walk, run approach to it. So it's such a dynamic sliding scale. Obviously, the goal is larger numbers, but I'm going to start small and do this the right way without too much guesswork.
Yeah, I mean, painting that picture in a Series A deck gets your valuation much higher. A lot of folks are treating this fintech revenue like SaaS revenue, which it's not equal, but it is what it is. So we'll see what
Agreed.
happens.
Yeah.
We're rooting for you, man. A hell of a model here. Let's wrap up with the famous five. Number one, favorite business book.
Favorite business book? I actually just finished reading Radical Candor. Love it. I would recommend it to anyone in our stage.
Number two, is there a CEO you're following or studying?
Not one in particular. I couldn't give that answer.
Number three, what's your favorite online tool for building the business?
I mean, look, I think, especially when you think about the remote world, Slack has just been fundamental. It becomes your collaboration and your office when you are remote.
Mm-hmm. Number four, how many hours of sleep do you get every night?
7.
You sleep well. That means there's a big secondary component in this round you're about to close, huh?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think it's more so I just go to bed as early as I can.
Fair enough. All right. And what's your situation? Married, single, kids?
I have a girlfriend, no kids right now.
All right. And how old are you?
Just turned 26 a week ago.
26. Very cool. Last question. Something you wish you knew 6 years ago when you were 20.
How hard it would be to start a tech company.
Guys, he cut his teeth at 14, sold his first business at 21 when his business was doing called $1 million a year in revenue with him and some buddies. Then went to college, cut his teeth in high-rise window cleaning, realized how big the GMV was in that space and said, you know what, I'm going to launch my own company here called Vendor PM in 2020. Raised a $4 million seed round last year, scaling nicely now. He's got over 5,000 properties on the platform across 2,000 property managers on one side, on the supply side, the window cleaners, the painters, the HVAC crew, all that jazz. He's got 35,000 vendors signed up, 600 RFPs completed on the platform in February with a big announcement coming up. We'll see what happens. Emiel, thanks for taking us to the top.
Awesome. Have a good one.
One more thing before you go. We have a brand new show every Thursday at 1 p.m. Central. It's called Shark Tank for SaaS. We call it Deal or Bust. One founder comes on, 3 hungry buyers, they try and do a deal live, and the founder shares back-end dashboards, their expenses, their revenue, ARPU, CAC, LTV, you name it, they share it. And the buyers try and make a deal live. It is fun to watch every Thursday, 1 p.m. Central. Additionally, remember, these recorded founder interviews go live. We release them here on YouTube every day at 2 p.m. Central. To make sure you don't miss any of that, make sure you click the subscribe button below here on YouTube, the big red button, and then click the little bell notification to make sure you get notifications when we do go live. I wouldn't want you to miss breaking news in the SaaS world, whether it's an acquisition, a big fundraise, a big sale, a big profitability statement, or something else. I don't want you to miss it. Additionally, if you want to take this conversation deeper and further, we have by far the largest private Slack community for B2B SaaS founders. You want to get in there. We've probably talked about your tool if you're running a company or your firm if you're investing. You can go in there and quickly search and see what people are saying. Sign up for that at nathanlatka.com/Slack. In the meantime, I'm hanging out with you here on YouTube. I'll be in the comments for the next 30 minutes. Feel free to let me know what you thought about this episode. And if you enjoyed it, click the thumbs up. We get a lot of haters that are mad at how aggressive I am on these shows, but I do it so that we can all learn. We have to counter those people. We got to push them away. Click the thumbs up below to counter them and know that I appreciate your guys' support. All right, I'll be in the comments. See ya.